I've gotten a few of these comments that frugality is a mental illness, so I thought I'd make a video on it, for more of that sweet YouTube views and money. So first of all, let's actually ask ChatGPT for a quick answer if frugality is in fact a mental illness. And if you scroll to the bottom, it'll say that for most people, frugality is simply a lifestyle choice and not a mental illness. And then if you go over to Google and look up some of the definitions of frugality, you'll see that it's the quality of being economical with money or food. Let's look at a few more. Quality or state of being frugal, the quality of being careful when using money or food. In general, just being prudent on savings and economical. So these are some of the comments I see regularly that some people just misunderstand it as simply being cheap. But in summary, frugality is really careful management of resources. Most people are deliberate and rational in choosing to be frugal. Now, why is it that some people just flat out hate frugality? We've already seen a little on why some people hate frugality. It's either due to not properly understanding what it is, or they see it as a form of enemy type of mindset, and that's because we are in a hyper capitalistic country, and frugality is seen as communism or anti capitalism, where it's a norm in our culture to spend and keep spending even if it's at the cost of our financial safety or if it means that we won't ever be able to retire. And this isn't something that I just made up. Americans generally have among the lowest savings rates in comparison to other countries. This is an article from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, and the title, Beyond Our Means: Why America Spends While the World Saves, with key highlights that Americans save too little, spend too much, borrow excessively, and don't have the finances to protect themselves from emergencies. And this isn't a secret. We've known this for many years that very many Americans frequently do not have all that much money left over after regular expenses. And you can see this from articles over the years being published about how 50% of all Americans live paycheck to paycheck, meaning there are no savings left over, and definitely not enough to cover any emergency expenses at all. The message here that I'm getting is basically don't make any mistakes. Don't misplan how much money you'll need, don't get sick, don't get injured, don't get into any accidents, don't get fired or even laid off. Definitely don't quit your job. And don't make any mistakes because you just can't afford it. And if you see an ambulance coming your way, then definitely don't make that mistake of getting caught by it. Because you know what the number one reason for bankruptcy is in the US? You guessed it, it's medical debt. And this culture of living paycheck to paycheck also makes sense why more than half of Americans feel behind on their retirement savings, meaning that they feel that they do not have enough retirement, or at the bare minimum, have enough to live the way they want to after they retire because they haven't saved enough. And worse yet, there's recent studies that 20% of Americans over 50 have no retirement savings at all. An older study, I believe, said it was 50% of Americans that have no retirement savings as well. So, culture of spending. In our country, there are very, very many reasons to spend. Just think about all the holidays we have that encourage spending. There's New Year's, Valentine's Days, birthdays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. I used to work in analytics for retail companies, and it's a well known thing that sales are way higher on holidays, and companies drive extra marketing and make extra effort to accommodate sales on these days. And remember that companies are built to profit. Many are owned by very successful business people whose goal is to keep driving up company profits. Remember, the goal of the corporation is to increase shareholder value, which means more money for them. So some of them will accumulate way more than they'll ever need and just pass that on to their children to repeat the cycle. So there is a major incentive for them to encourage your spending, because the more you buy, the more money they make. That's why there's millions and billions spent on marketing in the form of TV commercials, digital advertisements, posters, all sorts of marketing. And for people that don't control their spending and the allure of advertisements made to entice you to spend, they'll keep buying and eventually run out of money, have nothing left to pass on to their children, and just work their entire lives until it's time to pass. And it's also not a well-known secret, but there's an ever-increasing wealth inequality and gap between lower, middle, and upper income people. Even noted in this chart of average net worth versus median net worth. The median better represents the common American, while the average is more heavily skewed by the wealthy. As you can see, most people don't have that much money, but the stark difference from median and average should basically paint the picture that some people are just way more wealthy than most people. Now, the sad reality is that these large businesses, they're already established. Some inherited their wealth, some have been doing it for way longer than you have, so in essence, they're just much better capitalists than you are, and they will keep extracting your money for as long as you allow them to, until you can't even subsist paycheck to paycheck. This is just an anecdote, but the homeless encampments in my city are way larger than they used to be 30, 20, or even 10 years ago. And again, the part on overspending is also very well documented and studied. Take the book The Overspent American. In The Overspent American, she discusses that while The Millionaire Next Door, a popular book from 1996, details that millionaires aren't extremely flashy and spending their last penny on expensive clothes and cars, the less rich Americans seemed more inclined to do so, participating in excessive consumerism and more than they could afford, in an effort to keep up with the Joneses, to demonstrate material success and maintain their social status, and in essence, to fit in with the crowd. And now I'm hearing that voice in the background that says, but aren't we a country of individuals?
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
But overall, trying to chase acceptance leading to a cycle of dissatisfaction, because it's no fun going broke trying to keep up when in a lot of cases you just can't. She's also written another relevant book, Born to Buy, that discusses how companies and their marketing strategies have targeted us since birth. So I say this to point out how it's ingrained in our culture and how ingrained it is in our culture that we must spend to be cool or whatever those commercials are telling us. Now this is why I think frugality makes sense, and if my long ramblings have made sense to you so far, first of all, a quick recap that is, frugality is nothing more than careful strategy of how to best use your money. It's what successful businesses do all the time. So buy that 100-inch TV that I kind of like, or spend $1,000 on a trip that I've wanted to go on my entire life. Then the trip makes more sense. Invest $100 on project A, that'll make me $1,000, or invest $1,000 on project B, that'll make me $100. Self-explanatory. But also given that America is set up in a way where the rich gets richer and the poor gets poorer, I think we can't afford to not be frugal. An example of not being frugal is what Julia described in her book, to just keep spending because you want social validation, because large wealthy businesses in the form of marketing told you to, whether that spending benefits you or not. And I've worked in corporate finance for a pretty long time, and in business, if you run out of cash, it's pretty much game over. And that's why you might have heard the phrase, cash is king, because what happens if you can't make payroll? Or you can't pay your vendors? Or you can't operate your business? So in your personal life, your main priority should be to make sure that you don't run out of cash. Because when that happens, what happens if you can't pay your rent? What happens if you can't pay your mortgage? What if you have children and you can't pay your rent or your mortgage or afford food? And that goes whether it's today, for tomorrow, the next 5, 10, or 20 years, or for retirement. And I'm not an extreme minimalist or frugal person, by the way. So I think spend money that you can afford on things that you actually care about, and less on things just because some rich billionaire who owns a big business targeted a marketing campaign at you and told you to do so. But if I haven't convinced you yet and you are inclined to overspend, then please buy my product in the link below, because I'd love to have more money. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.